Mwiriwe neza amakuru yanyu murabona ko kuri iyi mifotora imyanya yamaze kugeraho ari myinshi cyane, imyanya igera kuri 223. Umwanya wa mbere ni Digital Agricultural Inspector, Director of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Financial Management Specialist in CPU, Director of OSCI and Land Notary, Documentation and Archives Officer, Principal Cashier A2 and A0, Health and Sanitation Officer, Data Manager, Staff Development Officer, Health and Sanitation Officer, Secretary and Custom Care Officer, Executive Secretary, Data Manager, Social Economic Development Officer, Social Affairs Officer, Advisor to Executive Committee, Director of Good Governance, Road Development and Maintenance Engineer, Executive Secretary, Social Economic Development Officer, Administrative Assistant, Construction Permitting Officer, Civil Registration and Notary, Accountant, Accountant A2 and A0, Custom Care Officer, Driver, Social Work. Murabona rwose n'abashoferi mwese mugomba kujya guturaho dokima zanyu kugira ngo namwe mubashe kubona akazi. Ndabona muri Ngororero bashaka abashoferi. Cashier A2 or A0, Documentation and Archives, Data Manager A0, A2 and A0 and the A1, Cashier A2, Accountants A1, Social Workers A2, Recovery Officer, Forestry Management Specialist, Social Affairs Officer, Business Development and Employment Promotion Officer, Business Development and Employment Promotion Officer, Good Governance and Specific Program Officer, Civil Registration and Notary, Public Health, Media and Communication Officer, in charge of disciplinary civil education and nutrition in Transit Center under contract, Forestry Extensions, Secretary and the Customer Care Officer, Pollution and Waste Police Specialist, Principal Cashier A2 A0, Social Affairs A0, Finance and Administration Officer, Constituency Officer, Social Economic Development Officer, Executive Secretary, Education Officer, Social Economic Development Officer, Local Revenue Collection and Inspector Officer, Executive Secretary, Documentation and Archive Officer, ICT Officer, Customer Care Officer, Procurement Officer, Secretary and Customer Care, Health and Sanitation Officer, Data Manager Officer, Monitoring Specialist, Procurement Officer, Executive Secretary, Accountant, Social Economic Development Officer, One-Stop Center Lawyer, Documentation and Archives Officer, Administrative Assistant, Documentation and Archives Officer, Finance and Administration Officer, Secretary to Finance Unity, Documentation, and Archives Officer, Plumbing and Technician, Legal Affairs Affair, Electricity Technician, Revenue Officer, Principal Cashier. Murabona ko n'indi myanya myinshi cyane irimo. Rero mukomeze mudepoze kandi mukomeze mutwandikire kuri WhatsApp ya 078 40 96 913. Murabona ko imyanya irimo cyane mudacikanwa. Urabona ko ahanini deadline zabaye ku itariki 20 kandi ntimucikanwe turahari kugira ngo tubafashe kandi mugire impungenge kuri buri kintu cyose turahari ku bwanyu. Murabona ko imyanya ari myinshi cyane kandi buri wese afitemo amahirwe ye na document tuba tuzifite ku bwinshi kandi zizewe kandi ku giciro gitoya gusa. Rero buri wese afitemo ndabona no muri Kirehe naho hari imyanya. Umuntu wese utuye muri Kirehe ya depoza. Abantu bafite abantu bize ibintu bya statistics nabo muri Kirehe n'abashakaho umwanya, n'abantu bize ibintu bya accountant mu depoza cyane n'imiyoborere myiza ndabona bayishyizemo. Rero mukomeze mu depoze kandi mukomeze mutwandikire, dukomeze tubafashe kandi mugubwe neza. Ni ukuri murabona ko imyanya ikomeje kuba ari myinshi cyane. Twongere dushimire umusaza yatumye imyanya yongera kuba myinshi cyane. Murabona ko igihugu rwose cyamaze kuvana abashomeri, kigiye gukora abashomeri benshi mu byaro bakajya mu mijyi cyangwa se bakajya mu kazi. N'abandi bize amategeko nabo ntago kudepoza byacikanwe. Uyu munsi imyanya irahari kabisa. Imyanya irahari myinshi cyane. Imyanya ni myinshi cyane.